Neil Isaac, I'm excited to have you here and talking about what can a business do now to start preparing themselves to possibly sell one day. And I just want to say this is good advice, even if you aren't going to sell. Good to have you here.
Good to be here, my friend. It is an honor, it is a privilege, it is a pleasure to share some time with you.
Neil, mention briefly a little bit about your experience. I've known you many years as from a highly ethical power seller to reinventing and building a whole new thing to knocking it out of the park with results with your clients.
Well, thank you. Yes, I much respect coming back your way. And born at a very early age. I'll go back to the very beginning. Grew up biologist, worked at a local tropical pet stores, wanted to have my own. And then that's what brought me here ultimately to the Triangles to acquire through an asset sale, a tropical fish store. I was a shark diver. And then I came here and I sold Nemo for 5 years. And then I got burnt out. I met a business broker and I sold that business in 2008. That was the first business that I sold. And, didn't know what I was doing and had someone show me the way. And today I'm honored enough to be able to help other people going on that same journey. So the people I help are like I was then. They run a business, they make money, they have a team, and they want to do something else, but they don't know how to do it, and they want to shepherd along the way. So that's who I am. That's who I am. That's what I do. And
what are some things people can do to start? They already have a business. They may be thinking, I don't know if I want to sell it or not. But where should they be giving their attention? What should they be focusing on so they at least have an option in the future?
Yeah. Well, you said it kind of leading up to this. Like even if you're not thinking about selling, you need to be considering your options for exit, because what we see over and over again is people call us and they say, hey, I wasn't planning on selling, so I didn't show any profit. And, I don't really have good books. And this is kind of a lifestyle business, but I kind of need to get out of here. What's it worth? Mm-hmm. And the answer is, probably not that much. Like people want a transferable business. They want something that they can take the owner's position in. They don't want to be the business. They don't want to guess where the money comes from. So I would say people that are kind of thinking long term should think about getting their financial house in order, building a good team, and making some money. Those are the ones that have the best options for exit. Whether you want to sell or not, those add value so that you can sell.
Another thing I had heard is the importance of having just some good assets, like building a valid email list and some of those things, so you can prove, other than Facebook likes, someone's actually paying attention to you. Yeah.
So when we do our valuations, there's a quantitative piece. How much money does the business make? What is the cash flow? But then there's this whole qualitative piece, which is much, much harder to measure. But what ultimately that says is, why should someone pay a premium for this business? And it's totally true that if two businesses make, $100,000, people are apt to buy the one that has better marketing, better contacts, better vendors, less customer concentration, better branding, just the stuff that you can't really measure as much. So that's how you get a premium, is to build that. One other way to think about it is, if you were to start a business today, how could someone copy you? Maybe they can make the same money, but can they build that large email database? Can they build these intangible things? Why would they pay you? Well, it's because it's hard to do that stuff, and you've already built that stuff up. And the more you can document it, the more it's transferable, the more value there is.
So, Neil, one thing I'm curious about, since part of what we focus on in this group is with brick and mortar business owners. If you're onto somebody that's thinking about either starting from scratch and building a brick and mortar business from the ground up, or possibly buying into a franchise or something like that, do you have, can you speak a little bit to what you would see as the pros and cons of going one path or the other?
Brick and mortar versus, you saying brick and mortar versus franchise, or franchise versus non-franchise?
Franchise versus non-franchise.
So just the other day, I watched an excellent video by Alex Hormozy. Do you guys follow him? He's crushed it on YouTube. We were talking about YouTube earlier, and he broke down what he calls the 4 ways to make money. And it's build a series of businesses. It could be retail, and own them individually, franchise, license, and then he had kind of a software play. He did a really nice job of breaking down the difference between those. And the main thing about a franchise model is you're pushing, as the franchise owner, you're pushing the investment out to people that buy into the franchise. So something like McDonald's or Subway, where you got to buy ovens and do a dense build out. It's a quicker model to grow if you're having someone else make that front end investment, and basically you're collecting the royalties off of that. Some models definitely work better for franchising than others, but other models it doesn't make sense to franchise in a licensing play. Could be more beneficial, but so it kind of depends on the type of business. I will say this, from talking with a number of business owners that want to sell, we sell established franchises. The majority of them don't feel like they're getting the value that they are paying, right? So they're paying royalties, maybe it's 5, 10, 12%. And they're like, I get nothing for this. And it limits them on their options for exit, because there's a lot of reasons why you can't buy into a franchise if you have a competing business already. It's a limiting factor when it comes to sale. And the last thing I'll say about the franchise model is there are the ones that do work, the franchisor is bringing valid things like relationships with suppliers. The franchisees are getting discounted products, or they're opening up deals. Maybe it's a locksmith and they have a deal with Home Depot for all their franchisees. That's the type of stuff that you hope that you're getting when you buy a franchise. But I would just advise people to look into that value exchange, and as much as you can, do the diligence on the brand to see if you're going to get out of it something.
Not to name it, but I know a sandwich person who said this same mayonnaise I can get at Costco at almost like a third or more lower than I have to buy it from the franchise. And I've heard that more than I heard the discount. Or some where the word I heard is, unless you own 3, you're an indentured servant to the franchise owner, because they want to flip it right on your spot and almost make you fail. So not to name names, but I've heard enough of this to get my concerns up.
Well, here's another thing. It could be a great franchise, could be a brand that's just crushing it and everybody wants to buy in. What if it's like a massage type place, and then you have a bunch of units of this well-known franchise brand, and then a scandal happens and the news is covering that there's bad things happening at another franchisee's location? That affects your value. You're in the same bed with all of those other franchisees. You're part of a family, so you're kind of beholden to the behavior of the group. So people don't think about these things when they buy into a franchise, but you are kind of riding that plane, and you're not the pilot of the plane.
I want to go over a few businesses, and then I'd like you to just pick ones that you'd like to talk about of how they could get them ready to sell. Okay. So I thought I'd name some, and you get to pick. One would be a small shoe store in a small town that really's built up a reputation. Another one would be a wine shop that built up a solid reputation. Another, a ice cream where let's say they have a specific ice cream that's well known, but they built up that relationship. Another one, a chocolatier, and another one would be like a gift shop, antiques, something like that. So I thought I'd take those 5, and you can pick as many or as few what they might do. These are people I know, so sure. What they can do to optimize it for being able to sell one day. Yeah.
If those opportunities are presented to me, I'm looking probably first at the wine shop and then the chocolatier. And here's why. First, I'm looking at just numbers.
Yeah.
Bigger numbers are better, right? And people spend a lot of bottles of wine are expensive, and people buy lots of them. So just from a top line numbers perspective, it'll be a lot easier to hit bigger numbers and bigger cash flow with the wine shop. Now, the chocolatier, they're making their own product, right? So now you've got kind of 2 things. You've got a retail facility and you've got a manufacturing facility. So you could kind of insource some of that, and maybe your margins get better. The others are nothing wrong with the other options. Those are Main Street businesses, and they're bought and sold all the time. But those 2 would be the ones I'd look at first as far as being able to do more with quicker.
So as far as building that equity into your brand value and thinking for the long haul and thinking about, okay, if I want to sell this business in 10 years, how do I be doing the right things now to build as much value into that brand as I can so I can get as a good price? So looking at those examples, whether if it's a retailer or really anything else, I mean, my question to you, Neil, is what have you found that people tend to wait too long to start thinking about in terms of creating that brand equity? What do you think most businesses should start doing sooner with the eventual goal of selling?
Well, let me break that down a little bit, Dave. So brand equity is people, I just did a video on YouTube, is how much is my phone number worth? I get that question a lot. I've had people say, somebody's going to buy my company. They're going to pay me $50,000 for my phone number. That's what it's worth because it rings all day. And my question is, how did you come up with that number? Well, it rings a lot. It's got to be worth something. But that's hard to get people to be on board with. However, if I'm going to kind of break down what brand equity means to me, or I'm going to call it goodwill. If I say that your business is worth $1 million and the assets are $500,000, then that other $500,000 is the brand equity, right? People are going to pay you $1 million for $500,000 worth of assets because they know this wine shop or this chocolate factory is worth more than just the things that they make or the inventory that they have. That's what the brand equity is to me. So that's first off how we do valuations. We back into goodwill. But as far as maximizing value, I'm going to go back to the first three things I said. I say it all day long. Make money. People don't want to buy businesses that are losing money. Be able to prove it. So good accounting, showing, actually paying taxes, right? Paying taxes. Build a great team because nobody can be you. Nobody can step into your shoes. And the other thing is kind of this having a process. Like, this is how we do this. I can take a vacation because I have processes and procedures built into my business. So it's not all about me, and the manager knows how to run it without me, and they know how to make the order and stock the shelves and all that stuff. Those are what I call the 3 Ps: people, profit, and processes. If an owner's focused on those things, they're going to build something that's other people see value in and want to step into.
I want to talk about the process because this is something in small businesses, brick and mortar, they often seem overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've done with them is often get them to assign each new employee to start writing down the process of what they do. And use that as the seed material. It's like, okay, here's when we hire you. Here's what occurs. We're opening up this position. And then what your first job is to make a list of what you understand the process. And then we'll sit down and fine tune it. Well, that's also building that process manual for the back office.
That's great too, because I heard years ago, I heard somebody say, like, the first 90 days of an employee is when you're really training them about how the business should run. After 3 months, they're just doing what's worked. They don't even, they forget about how it's supposed to be doing. They're just like, at that point, they're just like, this is how we've always done it after 90 days. So if you get them to, if you onboard them and you have them document, this is how we do it, then you're really getting to the core of your processes. So I think that's a phenomenal idea. And back to value, and this is Dave's question, employee manuals, policy and procedure manuals adds intrinsic value to a business. Mr. Business Buyer, hey, here's the manual. If this person quits, here's how to hire a new person. You're not beholden to the current staff. There's a process here to replace the current staff.
One of the interesting things about the 3 Ps that you presented is there's nothing in there, and I think this is good news, about product. And I think what I take from that is you don't have to have the greatest product in the world to have a great business. You actually have to have the great, people, product, and processes. And I think I'd love to hear your take on this, but I've found that sometimes small businesses overthink the product and think, okay, I'm going to have the best mousetrap and this makes me a great business, but I'm the only one who can make it. It's not making any money, and there's no team around me to support me. So I'm just curious, what's your thoughts on the product itself or the core service offering and where that fits in this?
That's that new brand that's going around, Liquid Death. Have you seen that?
Oh yeah.
They're selling water. I mean, their claim to fame is it's water.
Pet rock.
Yeah. I think that proves your point, Dave. Like, could be anything. Now, granted, if you make the worst chocolate in the world, no one's going to buy it. It's going to hurt your first P, which is profit, right? Mm-hmm. So but that being said, I don't think it matters that much. I do see, going back to Martin, you presented those different options.
Yeah.
I see people that sell like very small ticket items, and they don't think about like, I'm going to have to sell like 1,000 scoops of ice cream a day to make a living. They don't think about that with the business model.
Yeah.
So sometimes, I look for high ticket type items so that you can just get to the volume. But as long as the economics of it makes sense, I think this model is scalable to just about any product or service. And by the way, I know we're talking retail here. I'm a bigger fan of service models than retail or product models.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes back talking about retail space and Main Street space. If you think about a restaurant, you are intrinsically limited by your space.
Mm-hmm.
You run a restaurant, you have 100 seats, and you know the maximum amount of money that you can fit in those 100 seats on a weekend. Whereas if it's a janitorial service and you're running it out of a warehouse, you can just get more vans and more people and scale that model, and your space is not limited to the four walls that you're renting space from. So that's one reason I see service businesses kind of have an advantage, because the space isn't constraining to them.
Well, this is where maybe a restaurant might want to get their first food truck and get someone trained on it. And then,
100%.
Now we can start multiple. I actually, we've had a barbecue place that had numerous food trucks in their career. Yeah. And, they were out, and I know it wasn't the owner on every one of those food trucks running the thing.
And the trend now with the restaurants is to run a ghost kitchen. Out of the kitchen, they've got a whole nother restaurant. It's a pizza place, and they're frying up wings or egg rolls in the back, and those are being delivered through an app because it's ghost kitchen model, and they're just using the kitchen. You're paying rent for the kitchen whether you're using it or not. Yeah. So that's a creative way to use the space in a more efficient way.
But just like people who want to have a coffee shop, and I say, look, if you're going to have a grease pat and you're going to pay the money for it, you got to have a catering line going on at the same time, where the coffee shop is off in the front, but your money is being made in the catering. And there's a good example right in Raleigh, Solo Coffee. They've done a great job, and they pound the pavement. And I remember in the beginning, they went to every business taking their little donuts around. I don't know how they do in catering now, but they certainly were doing all the right things. If we got this kitchen, we need it running as solid as possible.
Sometimes I meet owners and they're like, we're open, Monday through Saturday or whatever. And I'm like, do you pay rent on Sunday? And they're like, well, of course. It's like, well, why aren't you making money on the day you're paying rent? Why don't you use the space? The answer is usually we can't have employees. We can't find the staff to do that, but you pay rent every day. You might as well utilize the space to the maximum ability.
Which brings up employees. I know it's not in your wheelhouse, but anything you're seeing on your perspective on getting employees, because
it is, Martin. The P everywhere. The P in my 3 Ps is people. Yeah. And never, I've done this for a while, and it's a big problem right now. And the reason is, when I'm listening for an owner to tell me, hey, why are you thinking about selling your business? What I want to hear is, I'm retiring, I'm sick. Well, I don't want to hear that they're sick, but I want to hear some personal reason to them. And when they say, I can't find help, or cost of goods is just too high right now, they're telling me like the business model doesn't work. And the next person to step in may have the same challenges that they do. That's a much harder business to sell, but that is 100% the reality right now. It has been for the last couple of years since the pandemic. It's extremely hard to find people to work. There's a lot of ways to incentivize people. The ones I find that ironically are not having trouble with people, they just have really good culture and people want to work there.
That's it. I was waiting for that.
It's simple. It's not that they need to be paid more. They just want to have a place that they like to go to work and it's fun. And but that's, some jobs just aren't that fun, I guess, but you can do a lot by having good culture.
I just want to say that's something we've worked with businesses is go like having even a mission or having a cause you're connected to. A lot of younger people really care about give back to society type causes and make that known, not just to your customer, but for getting people involved in it. Give them a bigger purpose you're part of. And it's amazing how it could be a yarn business. It could be something simple you don't think, but we always give to the poor in this way, or we are a culture of how to educate our people in building more skills for their future, or something like that.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's not always money you need to put on the table.
Absolutely. Well, money matters a lot, but it's not everything.
And so I'm curious, when you mentioned about how obviously the last couple of years, everybody's feeling it with the inability to get staff. But, so one of the things I've noticed is that there's these macroeconomic events that happen at certain times where something that used to always be easy becomes difficult. And I think for a lot of businesses, they were used to the idea that if I just hang a help wanted sign in the window, people will show up and I'll get employees. And I saw the same thing happen 10 years ago when the world went to social media and the internet for marketing. There was businesses that said, hey, I could just pay a couple $1,000s a month to put an ad in the yellow pages and the phone would just ring. And that's all I had to do. And then that broke. So my question is, do you see people just when they come to you, when they want to sell a business, do you see it sometimes maybe it's a symptom of just their inability to manage the new normal when the environment around them changed and their business model would have actually been okay if they knew how to manage it?
I do. Yes. Since the pandemic, I have seen many trends, which I've deemed the pandemic hangover, right? Like, we didn't think that we'd have this weird cost of goods issue. Mm-hmm. We didn't think that housing prices would be all over the place. We didn't think that this labor thing would happen, but it's just like one thing after another that it's got thrown out of whack. And it's really hard for business owners to adapt to all this change. And some of them just have gone out of business. Some of them are doing better than ever. Mm-hmm. The back to the home service type businesses, they crushed it during the pandemic because people spent more time in their homes. And the cost of goods thing is weird too, because one thing I found with affected business sales is several businesses, they saw that they couldn't get what they normally would get. So when they could get it, they would over order and they had more inventory than normal because they just saw the constraint. So they just jumped on it. And then they went to sell and the buyer would say, I'm spending all this money. I don't want to buy extra inventory. It's like I'm already leveraging. I don't want to over leverage. So that caused kind of it was problematic for a few deals that we did. And we had to figure out creative ways to finance those. But there's all kinds of weird stuff happening that didn't used to happen. But I mean, at this point, we're in 2023 now. If businesses haven't found a new norm, they probably already went out of business. Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like 2023 is the first normal year since 2019. It feels like 2019 again, but it's definitely been the Etch-a-Sketch shake-up since the pandemic. People had to figure out how to do business again, over and over and over again. I hear, hey, of course, we don't report everything. We have a separate bank account, or we have people pay us directly, or the cash comes in and then we take it and we pay the employees so that we don't have to pay sales tax or employee tax. And they often say, like, everybody does it. And that's the only way to make a living. I hear that all the time. I hear other people that are the exact opposite, that say we report everything. We overpay our taxes because we're scared of the government. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting being on this. Like, I don't work for the government, but people will tell me exactly how they run their business. And I can tell you that the ones that are doing it that first way, like, they're really limiting their options, because nobody's going to believe that you are making money. You're just not showing it. And those people could go to jail. Like, mm-hmm. It is illegal what's the way that some people run their businesses. So I encourage everybody to run clean books, to work with a qualified accountant to do their books. It makes the business worth more. And we usually, when we do work with those folks and they say, I wanted to get paid more, we say, well, you've kind of already made that money because you didn't pay taxes all these years. Mm-hmm. If you had paid taxes and we could have shown that the business makes money, you would have made more on the back end. So that's something I see all the time.
And here's one other thing I'm curious about, maybe not quite to the extreme you just mentioned, but I think it's the same personality type of a business owner. that, let's say, okay, so I forgot, I withdraw $8,000 from the bank and I book it as office supplies every week. And so not necessarily that example, but I'm also just wondering, do you run into situations where the business owner basically has either a unique set of skills or a unique set of relationships, and that's what makes the business work? And then from the buyer standpoint, I'm thinking, okay, well, if you're not here, this isn't going to work without you here.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Personal goodwill. And this gets back to people. Like I say, you have to have a deep bench. It's super common that business makes a lot of money, but you take out the owners and it all stops. So if somebody's making $200,000, but it's just them, I'd rather see a business that makes $100,000, but they're paying a couple people 50 grand a year that they can step out and the business can make money without them. Because would you buy a business based on what's in the owner's head and the owner's leaving?
Mm-hmm.
We see that a lot.
And so I'm also curious about multi-generational family businesses. Do you run into situations where there's the possibility of all or some of the business staying in the family versus it all going to an outside party? And do you ever become a part of that conversation of how should that all work?
We do. So we're not accountants, we're not attorneys, but we do see a lot of family in the business. It's one of the first questions we ask when we're doing the financial analysis is okay, you have people, but they're all related to you and none of them are going to stay. And, the wife works for free because she gets paid through the husband. Like, we got to understand how that works, but not just that, but if it's multi-generation, there's a whole emotional piece that comes into play. Like, is the son selling his father's business? And now it's more than just about money. Has the father died and we're trying to honor his estate? Like, we're way past financial analysis here. So that's part of the fun part of this job is you're kind of a psychologist in a lot of these situations. On paper, it's all the same. We're looking for cash flow and see what similar businesses have sold for. But we got to peel that onion, so to speak, and figure out the family dynamics. There's always some personal element to a business.
That's excellent. I really appreciate, Neil, you coming here. I wanted to cover it. I want to take a moment to let people know we'll put all your contact information below in the text. And also, Neil, tell you a moment of what Dave and I are working with the Alignable Brick and Mortar project.
Yeah, so we've put together a closed group. It's the Main Street Mastermind. It's a training dojo exclusively for brick and mortar business owners to really get together and work on some of the unique challenges of day-to-day running a brick and mortar business. And so that's what we've put together on the Alignable platform. To join as a member, it's $29 a month. And we have a process we go through. It meets twice a month on Zoom on Monday nights. And we also have some other additional free events that we do that are open to the public, just like what we're doing here with this interview. For those of you out here that are watching, if you have a brick and mortar business, reach out to us and we'd love to see you come and join sometime soon.
We'll put the free intro group where we list. So if you just want to dip your toe and be part of the bigger group, we have that. And then if you want to join us on as part of that insider group, let us know. And I just highly recommend you, Neil. I've known you for many years. You're a man of high integrity, but to me, the idea is how do you win with integrity? And I think we both share that value, not just win, but win along with integrity. Both of them have to be there. And I've watched you really build that out in taking care of your clients, being upfront. And if you can help them, you do. And if not, you're upfront when you talk to them.
Means a lot coming from you, Martin. Thank you so much for saying that.
Excellent. Well, this was wonderful. And again, we'll have links, and we'll also recommend following Neil's YouTube channel. You've got great content out there too. We'll make sure to get that in there as well.
At Raleigh Business Broker on YouTube.
Yeah. And want to thank everyone for joining us now. It was great, and look forward to hearing people's comments, what they like and what they want more of, and ask if you got value out of this video. Make sure to subscribe and click the bell, and also share it with 3 people.